Face front, true believers. You're listening to the Marvel Saga, Episode 9. I'm Nicholas Prom.
And I'm Jerry McMullen. Each episode, we take a look at Marvel Saga, the anniversary special that came out in 1985-86 that was looking at Marvel Comics history told in chronological order, not necessarily publishing order.
Very good.
It has been a couple of weeks since we last got together to do one of these. But during that time, we were actually together. You and I met up at Rose City Comic Con.
Oh, we sure
got
did.
to hang out with with each other and some of our other podcasting friends, and just see a lot of talented people there at the building.
That's true. That was really a wonderful time with friends, and very good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's all right. We had the chance. We were working. My buddies with the Worst Comic Podcast and I were working the Hero Initiative table, so we got to spend some time with Dave Gibbons throughout that weekend.
Yeah, and what a great guy. It was a terrific thrill to get to meet and visit with him, and unfortunately, on Sunday,
yes.
You had the panel that you guys moderated with Dave, which was wonderful.
Thank you.
I got to hold up your cell phone so that we could live stream that. That was fun. But unfortunately, and Dave's told some wonderful anecdotes about Julie Schwartz and Len Wein. And unfortunately, later that afternoon, the news broke that Len Wein had passed away, which was pretty sad. I was just completely dumbfounded by that news. It was really terrible.
Yeah, he had been in poor health for the last couple of months.
Yeah.
But I don't think we were necessarily expecting this to happen so quickly. And thankfully we noticed it picking up on our phones via social media, and we were able to pull Dave aside and give him a heads up about it before some random fanboy rushed the table to break the news. So
right, that's very good. You know? And Dave told some wonderful anecdotes about Len that morning, and of course they were partners on Green Lantern in the early '80s, and
Len was the editor on Watchmen.
Yeah, that's right. I always forget that. But yeah, so that was strange.
Yeah, it put a somber note on the end of the show, but other than that, it was an incredible show. We had a great time hanging out with podcast friends like the Sutherlands, and seeing some Facebook and social media friends like Matt Roberts and
Matt. I see Matt all the time.
Yeah,
at our local events, but yeah,
sure. Aaron Myers and such.
Yes. Yeah, and you got to meet Spencer, one of the co-hosts on Comic Reflections.
Spencer stopped by with his better half.
Definitely better.
No, Spencer was very nice. It was good to put a face.
But yeah, no, Comic-Con was a really wonderful time. I'm so glad that we all had the chance to get together.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's go ahead and start talking about Marvel Saga issue 9.
Yeah, let's do it. Marvel Saga number 9 was cover dated August of 1986, but according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it hit the stands May 6th, 1986. And we've got another great wraparound cover, this time penciled by Keith Pollard of Power Man and Iron Fist fame. Inked by Joseph Rubinstein, who I know primarily from Savage Sword of Conan.
Yeah, he was kind of one of those house inkers for Marvel, as I recall. It just seemed like he was always there to fill in or to take on an assignment whenever it was needed. But yeah, it's a good cover. I see elements of both Kirby and Ditko in the various images. I might have rearranged this cover slightly differently. I mean, we talked about it last time, about how prominent the X-Men are in terms of marketing on the front cover.
Oh yeah.
But the X-Men stories contained in this particular issue, to me, aren't as important as the FF or Spider-Man stories that are in this issue.
Right. And again, it's a top above the title on the front cover says inside more X-Men and X Factor origins. And of course we have X-Men and Spider-Man prominently displayed on the cover. I'm like, Marvel knows where the money's coming from.
Yes.
And they want to like get the casual reader who just gets those books to maybe pick a Marvel Saga.
Yeah. And for that matter, X-Men and X Factor being mentioned above the title of the book is definitely designed so if it is on a spinner rack, that part will be visible for people to pick up on.
Very good. But yeah, I totally agree that the events that take place in the Fantastic Four, for example, in this period are definitely maybe more important than this Angel entry into the X-Men story. But let's get into this. Marvel Saga Book 9, Look to the Skies, was researched and compiled by Peter Sanderson. We open continuing the origin of the Angel, then being referred to as the Avenging Angel, with 4 new pages of art, penciled by Steve Geiger, who I don't know from Adam.
I don't recall that name either.
Yeah, but inked by the legendary Al Williamson.
Al has been a central figure within comic and comic strips for years. And he's done everything, whether it's superheroes, science fiction, war, horror. I mean, he's done a little bit of everything over his career. And
and this is the beginning of when he's coming back into mainstream comics from comic strips, and he's just an inking workhorse for Marvel. And I think it's so wonderful of them that like took this aging creator and really gave him a lot of work. I mean, like, I read a lot of 90s Marvel comics that were being inked by Al Williamson. Which is pretty great, especially because maybe a lot of those books weren't too happening. That flair from this legend maybe make them a little cut above the rest.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, Williamson, geez, I mean, he goes back all the way to, he's one of the great artists at EC Comics, doing a lot of their science fiction. And then, of course, he took over, I think, from Mac Raboy on Flash Gordon, the comic strip.
That sounds right.
Someone will correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. He did the...
the Marvel Star Wars also.
Yeah, Empire Strikes Back.
Yes. And also the Marvel the Star Wars comic strip that was happening in the newspapers.
Yep.
So...
That was when I first encountered him, was with that newspaper strip.
Yeah, wonderful artist, one of my favorites. But yes, so we get into this. I gotta say, this is a far better choice for art than the previous part of this we read, where Bill Sienkiewicz was drawing it. And no shade on Sienkiewicz, but this is something that fits the Marvel house style. It's got bearing this classic comics look, and Sienkiewicz is just kind of out there, and it was very jarring in the previous issue compared to all the Kirby and Ditko and Dick Ayers and all the other stuff we were looking at.
Correct. I'm flipping back and forth because we're reading this from the Essential Marvel Saga collection, so just looking at the last pages of issue 8 and comparing them to issue 9. Again, it's not any kind of personal attack against Sienkiewicz and his style. That was a style that he was developing in that era. But what we see here from Geiger and Williamson very much falls along what we were seeing from Marvel in the 60s that we see throughout the rest of the book here.
Very good. Precisely.
Yep.
But the Angel, who is kind of... his mind has been warped by the gas he's using as the Avenging Angel. He has had a gas gun or something. He is in a fight with Cyclops and Iceman, who have come to recruit him to the X-Men. And if that weren't bad enough, the Angel is he was fighting some spies or saboteurs or something, and he got this vial of a radioactive isotope that will explode soon if that isn't dealt with.
Hmm.
Um,
Because part of the thing with comics in the 1960s is that radioactive items were readily available
oh
left
yeah,
and
you
right.
pick it up at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
If yeah, but so Cyclops isn't making much headway. I think the Iceman's already been taken
Knocked
out
out.
by Angel. So Professor Xavier steps in, from a distance, and speaks to the Angel and tells him what's going on. Stop fighting. You've got this nuclear isotope. You've got to fly up into the atmosphere where it will freeze and and end that chain reaction. And so he complies. I thought, why didn't Professor X do this in the first place?
Yeah. Why send the two guys out if you could just make your long distance mental phone call and take
Yeah,
care of it peacefully?
right. And then have Cyclops and Iceman show up after they've talked and like, oh,
Hmm.
cool, you know, and I'll go with
Yeah.
you now, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but of course, we got to have conflict. Um, but yeah, the angel flies up into the air, far into the atmosphere, where he nearly loses consciousness, but the
Hmm.
isotope is neutralized. He's able to come back to Earth safely, and he joins up with the X-Men.
Yep.
Whee!
Yeah.
So very good. But so then we'll cut over to what's happening with Spider-Man. Um,
Ooh, the new breakout star of the Marvel Universe.
oh yeah, you may have heard of this guy. Um, but even before we could get to Spidey, we meet an inventor named Adrian Toombs. He's an elderly gentleman, and he's created this wonderful flying harness um, that allows him to, fly, float through the air. But he finds out his business. He's been working busy in the lab, but he finds out his business partner has been cheating him out of profits of the company, and so he beats that guy up and smashes his lab and says, "You know what? Screw you. I'm gonna use this harness to take my revenge on the world, basically, and steal whatever I can get. Um, Forget about making an honest living."
Yeah. I'm just hearing you recap this. I wonder how many crooked business partners there are out there
Oh,
because
plenty.
Puppet Master uh, turned on his business partner.
Yeah.
We haven't met him yet, but Simon Williams, who becomes Wonder Man, had issues with his business partners. It it becomes a reoccurring thing that the Marvel writers, in this case Stan Lee, kind of seems to go back to from time to time.
It's a very common trope. And in fact, matter of fact, I was just thinking of this old Bela Lugosi movie. It's called The Devil Bat, and he's a
Hmm.
scientist. You know the movie? Yeah,
I've heard of it. I haven't actually watched it.
it's in the public domain. It's actually pretty fun. It's on YouTube. But he's a scientist who works for this company, and they made millions while he's just kind of like working in the lab. And he decides to exact revenge. He uses electricity and chemicals to make this bat huge, or kind of huge, and then sends it off
Yeah,
to like kill people. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun.
it's a
Um,
product of the times.
it is. But anyway, the Vulture. Oh no. So the Vulture is doing crimes. Peter Parker gets the bright idea that maybe I can make some money to help Aunt May pay the bills by selling photographs to J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle. So he
Hmm.
gets Uncle Ben's miniature camera and he sets out as Spider Man to go and get some photos of the Vulture in action. One thing I noticed as I was reading this comic, they have kind of retconned and edited a lot of these images, so it's not about the Daily Bugle, but the Now magazine, which Jameson was
Hmm.
publishing in the 1980s.
Yeah,
because I think at this time the Puma actually took over as publisher of the Bugle, and Jameson was ousted.
Yeah. I want to say Now Magazine wasn't introduced until the mid 70s, right around the time of uh, Miss Marvel getting her own series.
Oh, okay. So maybe it was Jameson had both, and then but in the late '80s he was ousted from the Bugle,
Yeah,
and he just
yeah.
had Now.
Hmm.
Um, but it's odd because they've changed all this. The new Bugle papers are now say Now on them. Peter refers to as Now magazine. I
Yeah,
get it. They're trying to make it like a sliding time scale. So like, oh, it wasn't that long ago.
yeah,
But these kinds of retcons, I'm not crazy about.
sure. It's the George Lucas effect.
Yeah. One thing I noticed about the Vulture that I'd forgotten about, that in these early appearances he has these tail feathers on the costume.
Hmm.
It's really not. It doesn't look good.
The outfit as a whole isn't the most spectacular outfit, but definitely those tail feathers do not help his cause any.
Right, and I'm kind of glad that got phased out. Kind of like the
Hmm.
webbing under the arm that Spidey had.
Yes,
I'm like, get rid of that.
yeah,
Uh, but at any rate, Spidey does get photos of the Vulture, and but the Vulture defeats him on their initial outing.
as is the case in most of these early Spider-Man adventures.
Right. But Spidey says, okay, well, I'm going to come up with some changes to the deal. I'm going to have additional web fluid cartridges so that I won't run out of fluid. Whew! Because can you imagine if they use that as a plot device
Yeah.
constantly, him running out of web fluid? I'm glad they never did that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Jameson is an idiot because he doesn't suspect Peter. Like, I don't know how you do it, kid, getting these photos, but
Well, and they see his camera. I mean, it's not a professional photographer's camera,
yeah,
and he's taken all of these photos of Spider-Man in action with an amateur camera. I've got to imagine that any of the staff photographers at the Daily Bugle were just livid about this kid coming in, selling photos off the street, and taking away their income.
sure. And like that would be a great plot line. I mean, uh, Ned Leeds wasn't a photographer, was he? He was just a reporter.
He was a reporter.
Okay. Uh, but yeah, and of course later we found out he was the
Hmm.
Hobgoblin, or was
Yeah.
he? But anyway, Spidey goes after the Vulture again because Jameson's giving him good dough,
Hmm.
uh, and this time he takes him down. Good job. And yeah, it's so funny. Spidey's making this dough now, and Jameson doesn't suspect a thing. He's like, I don't know how
Yeah.
you do it, kid. It's like, isn't this guy a journalist? Isn't
Yeah.
where is his like
Why isn't he asking questions?
exactly?
And if you've been publisher long enough to put together a successful newspaper and stuff, you want to vet everything about this before you start publishing these photos.
Yeah. And the
So
question one would be, how in the world are you getting these? Especially with that dinky little camera. Because
yeah.
these are like close up shots, real like within a few feet of the vulture or whoever the subject is.
Hmm.
Um yeah.
Yeah. It's comics.
it's
Uh,
it's really me saying like Stan Lee has a lot of good ideas, but they're full like fun ideas for stories, but they're
yeah.
full of plot holes because it's
Hmm.
just like, oh, here's an idea, go, and then on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't
Yeah.
have anybody saying like, wait, that doesn't really connect. Like,
Hmm. Yeah. I will say, did this summer, did you get a chance to see Spider-Man Homecoming?
oh yeah, yeah,
I The one thing about the Vulture that has always bothered me is his dorky costume. The green feathers and all of the little white mane around his neck and stuff. But that Spider-Man Homecoming, the Vulture as portrayed by Michael Keaton, was so well done, so believable.
Oh, I
It was,
loved it.
I mean, he was there was a lot of good parts about that movie, but to me, Michael Keaton was the standout best part of that movie.
It's hard not to agree with you, Jerry. He was really great. I love that his career has really in the on the upswing again
Hmm.
after really being out of the spotlight for a number of years, really.
Pretty
Uh,
much, yeah.
well, but yeah, I really I liked the approach they took with the Vulture and how cool and how I think he was seemed more threatening in that movie than he ever has in a comic.
Correct.
I mean, I think it was dumb luck a lot of the times that kept Spidey from being killed.
We're gonna flip over to the Fantastic Four now, but before we do that, we got to give a little Marvel history backstory because we're going to start encountering some space races here.
You sure
They've
are.
often been rumored about, but now we know for certain there are other species out in space. We go to the planet Hala, which is home to two species. It's home to the Kree and to the Kolati. The Kree are the blue-skinned aliens, but at this time they're very primitive. The Kolati are these plant-like creatures and these two races basically share their planet together.
I really liked that.
Yeah.
It's just like Admiral Akbar and the squid-headed people in Star Wars. I think they're supposed to be on from the same planet. It
Yeah.
must be a water world.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I always like this in science fiction, like two sentient races that are so different that share the same world. Love it.
Yeah. So they're visited by a third race, and it's the Skrulls.
Yeah.
Um, and at this point, the Skrulls are a peaceful race. They're more interested in trading and business. They're not looking to conquer the universe.
They're more
And
Ferengi than Klingon.
true, yeah. And they come to this planet and they're like, well, we don't know who the dominant race is, who we should be doing our business with. Should we be talking to the Kree or working with the Kaladi? I mean, what's the do? So they take a delegation of each and they bring them to Earth's moon because Earth is basically kind of halfway between the Skrull homeworld and Hala, the Kree and Kaladi homeworld. And that's become a plot point that gets used repeatedly in Marvel Comics over the years, that with Earth kind of being in the center of everything, that's why so many alien encounters happen, is that we're kind of right in the middle of everything.
Yeah. One thing that
So
just
they,
occurred to me, sorry,
yeah,
one thing that just occurred to me is later, a couple pages later, they make a footnote that this happened like a million years ago.
hmm
So this is before the Celestials planted the Eternals and the Deviants as genetic experiments on the Earth.
sure,
Is that right?
I believe so.
No. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's one of those. The Eternals as a kid reading comics, the Eternals always gave me headaches trying to make sense of it all.
Right.
So I need to go back now as an adult and revisit those stories. I think I would appreciate them a lot more now than I did trying to read them as a kid.
Right. I mean,
So,
even I tried reading them a few years ago. And I was like, it's Kirby kind of doing the New Gods over again,
hmm
only it's more talky.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's still cool because it's Kirby, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, the Skrulls have taken a delegation of Kree and Kaladi, brought them to Earth's moon, and they're like, do something here, prove your worthiness to us. So the Kree build this giant, magnificent blue city on the moon. But the Kaladi have put together this beautiful garden, and they're creating and all this stuff. And the Skrulls decide that they want to work with the Kaladi. The Kree gets so upset by that that they go on this manslaughter and just start killing the Kaladi left and right and become very violent. They kill the Skrulls that have taken them. They take over the Skrull ship and start learning how that works, and they start building their own ships, and so the Kree become a race, a spacefaring race on their own right. And we're going to come back to them later as we're going through this, but the main point that we're taking away from this is the city on the moon that the Kree built and later abandoned, because now the Fantastic Four are landing on the moon and discovering this city, this fully formed blue area of the moon.
I think it's very interesting. I think it's very interesting that the Skrull, or excuse me, the Kree rebellion, or hostility against the Skrulls because they didn't get their way, was the catalyst for the Skrulls becoming this warlike race. Because if they already were these warriors, they probably would have crushed the Kree right at the get-go.
And they would have probably had already wiped out the Kaladi if they had been that way.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, it's we're better bouncing ideals off of each other, and so yeah. So the Fantastic Four land on this blue area of the moon, and they're surprised that there's breathable air there, and so Johnny's able to flame on and fly around, and but while they're there, they discover a new foe called the Red Ghost, and
and he's red because he's a commie.
Yes, he's from the Soviet Union, and apparently the Red Ghost took a rocket up into space with 3 apes.
Right.
And they all were exposed to the cosmic rays. So they all have their own set of powers, much like the Fantastic Four do. And so the Fantastic Four are battling the Red Ghost and his apes, and suddenly they hear this voice say, put down your weapons, the Watcher commands you. And it's this giant, bald-headed guy in Greek robes, and he says he is the Watcher and that he has been watching Earth for eons. And turns out the Watcher, whose name is Uatu, he is part of this whole race where they observe other races. And supposedly they have this vow not to interfere, but 9 times out of the 10, when the Watcher does appear, he does interfere.
Well, yeah. Why have him show up if he's something bad's going to happen? Even that is interference, giving somebody a heads up.
Yeah. So we get a little back history on the history of the Watcher's race.
It's sad.
Then we get, what's that?
It's sad.
Yeah. We get back into the battle between the Fantastic Four and Red Ghost and his apes. And at one point, Red Ghost gets caught up in the Watcher's house there on the moon within the blue. And he's going all the way through, and he's seeing all kinds of incredible things. And what I like about this is that whole page in this issue was later homaged by John Byrne in Uncanny X-Men 137, when the X-Men are battling the Imperial Guard on the moon for Jean Grey, and that it's the Death of Jean Grey issue.
Yeah, I recall.
And Wolverine gets knocked into the Watcher's house, and he goes through the exact same scenes, and it was Byrne doing his little homage to Kirby in that issue.
Gosh, I didn't even think about that. Maybe I was just so preoccupied with how implausible it was that the X-Men were defeating the stand-ins for the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, the X-Men are great at anything, but it's like the power set is not there to defeat those guys. With the Phoenix on your side, sure, but...
Yeah, and just the sheer numbers, the Imperial Guard outnumbered them pretty much 2 to 1. So it shouldn't have been a contest at any point. But
no. Especially when Gladiator is Superboy.
Yeah.
Oh well, comics.
So the Fantastic Four stopped the Red Skull, and as
Not the
as
Red
the Fantastic,
Skull, the Red
or
Ghost.
the Red Ghost, excuse me.
That's okay.
And so the Watcher bids them adieu and says, hey, you know, you guys have proved yourselves. You're going to be part of the space era now. You're not going to be limited to Earth. You're going to be expanding out into the universe, and um, gives them hope for the future. And at this time, this was still early '60s. I think we're looking '63 at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is the space race.
Yeah, we still haven't landed man on the moon at this point.
Right, but I mean, this is
Uh,
like echoing Kennedy saying, "What? I'll put a man on the moon by the end of the decade." Like we choose to go to the moon. That wonderful
yeah.
speech,
Hmm.
and that's awesome. Uh, I love that they're fighting commies. This is one of
Yeah.
my favorite issues of the Fantastic Four. It's a
Hmm.
super fun issue.
Yeah.
I think it's weird though that the Watcher says, "Hey, hey, don't fight," and they says, "Okay, I want you to fight to determine." Like whatever. Like, what? Why did you say anything?
Yeah. Yeah. So when the Fantastic Four get back, their next encounter is with Prince Namor, the Submariner, but he's being controlled by the Puppet Master,
Sure is.
who we thought was dead, but most cases when someone appears dead, they're not really dead.
Right.
So, and
Surprise.
he's controlling Namor, and he sends Namor to attack the Fantastic Four and to kill him, but Namor, he's not able to override his affection for Susan Storm,
Yeah.
that he can't destroy her, and as a result, he can't destroy the entire team, and he fights off the Puppet Master's control and um, lives to fight another day. And we'll definitely see both of these figures again in upcoming issues.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what's going on with Thor?
Well, Thor is having a fight with the radioactive man. Uh, the Chinese commie supervillain, not the Simpsons character. Uh, and so that's fun. It's just a one panel like, hey, remember Thor exists still, and having a fight with supervillains. Um, it's so weird those early Thor stories because this is not the only fighting a commie story that
Yeah.
this character from
Why would a Norse
mythology.
god care about communist foes
Right. I mean, I think it's in this one it works more because
of the
uh,
power level?
the
But
power level. I mean, because there was another time he just fought just plain old commies, like no
hmm
powers. I'm like, what?
yeah.
Um,
And this is another case where they're trying to sell current comics on the stands, that they make mention of Radioactive Man being part of the Masters of Evil.
oh
And this is
yeah.
right around the time that the big Masters of Evil storyline was going on over in the pages of the Avengers.
Oh, was this is that Roger Stern run where the Masters of Evil take
Hmm.
over the Avengers Mansion?
Yeah.
That is a wonderful read.
Yep.
Just 5
It,
great issues.
it's probably my favorite Avengers story of all time.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very good. Although Radioactive Man wasn't part of the lineup at that point.
He wasn't, but it's just those subtle selling points that they're using with this comic to sell other things, like
Yeah.
the mentioning Ed Spector on the cover.
Yeah.
So,
Uh, but yeah, I love that story. Love that. Um,
yep.
but yeah, we cut over to Spider-Man now, and the inventor, the Tinkerer, looks like he's teamed up with some aliens who are set to conquer the Earth. Spidey gets wind of this, and the aliens try to overpower him, but to no avail. The Tinkerer uses something he's invented to blast
Mhm.
Spidey. But he beats them anyway, and he's like, you know what? Look, man, they were loyal to whoever they were, the world they were from. They were just doing their job. But you
Mhm.
traitor, you know. But then the Tinkerer kind of gets away or whatever, and there's a mask of his left behind, and it leads Spidey to think that he also was an alien. little does he know, none of them were aliens. Um, but they were just guys playing up that angle to spy on people and then blackmail them, which
it's a very elaborate ruse.
really elaborate ruse. I mean, like it, it defies not only logic but any like. Well, that's so complicated,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
There are extortionists who, believe it or not, don't dress up like men from outer space.
But then again, Scooby Doo made a living off of that kind of stuff. So
True, true. Um, and you know, in the Tinkerer, I feel like he like that character kind of lay dormant for a long time, but like in the '80s and the early '90s, he was like a major like, oh yeah, this guy. We need some
yeah,
devices to outfit our supervillains. We go to the Tinkerer.
yeah. And he
He,
was even in Spider-Man: Homecoming this summer as part of the Vulture's crew.
oh my gosh, I forgot.
Yeah.
They just slipped that right in there, and
Hmm.
yeah. Um, but I like that. I liked in that movie. They're like, okay, we got the Shocker, kind of. We got a Mac Gargan, who
Hmm.
I that's the number one Spidey villain that I want to see in a movie that hasn't been in a movie. But anyway, one of the quote unquote aliens that the Tinkerer was working with turns out to be Quentin Beck, who goes on to become Mysterio,
Yes.
a villain who I love despite any real reason to think that he's good.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because as soon as you know it's Mysterio, the jig is up.
Yeah. I that whole fishbowl helmet thing. I've got to think that it's got to be the warmest, most humid thing to be in. I can't imagine that being a practical costume.
Yeah. Um, uh, but we cut over to Dr. Henry Pym,
Yes.
who, as you recall, was widowed because of commies again. But he meet another scientist, older guy, introduces Hank Pym to his daughter, Janet Van Dyne, who is the spitting image of his late wife, Maria. Dr. Van Dyne, is killed by an alien invader from another dimension, Pillai, from Cosmos with a K.
Yeah. I like that they refer to him as wealthy scientist Vernon Van Dyne. That right there is an oxymoron if we've ever heard one. There are no wealthy
Well, I mean,
scientists.
he just maybe applied for a lot of grants,
Yeah.
and just
Hmm.
stopped answering
It,
phone calls. We don't know. Uh,
it just seems odd seeing that pointed out like that.
right.
So
Well, because
Janet
Janet is the
inherits the money.
wealthy
Yeah.
debutante, that kind of thing, with
Hmm.
all the money.
Yeah.
But anyway, her father's killed by this jack off from another dimension, and so she goes to Hank Pym like, "Oh, what am I gonna do?" And he's like, "Look, do you really want revenge? Do you want to, get your uh, uh, get justice for your father? Join me because I'm Ant Man, by the way, uh, as the Wasp." And so he performs like surgery on her and stuff, and gives her uh, Wasp powers. He gives her a power that he doesn't have. Also, is as the power of flight.
Hmm. She develops, when she shrinks down, she develops wings on her back.
Yeah,
And she also has the bioelectric stings that generate from her hands.
yeah. Um, so anyway, they team up. Jan says, "I, by the way, I think I'm falling in love with you," as they're gonna go fight this alien, and then
Convenient.
they kill the guy. Which, I mean, I know he's a monster from another planet or whatever,
Yeah,
but a sentient being,
yeah,
and it totally says, yeah, they killed him.
yeah.
Uh,
And by my thinking, if this being can travel space and land on Earth, he's got to have be back in contact with someone back on his home world. What's to stop them from coming to check? Why haven't you replied back to our messages?
Well,
It just seems like it's just inviting the aliens to keep coming at this point.
right, except they did mention he was a renegade from Cosmos, so it was just him that was the asshole. I guess the rest of them were cool over there. Um, but yeah, goes on to mention that, of course, Janet goes on to lead the Avengers. Whee! Um, the FF meet the Mad Thinker and his awesome android.
Yeah,
That's a
which in this particular image that they give us, the Mad Thinker really looks like Kirby there.
Yes, yes. And normally later his hair is longer. He's got that John
Yeah.
Denver hair or the
Hmm.
cousin Oliver hair. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
The bowl cut.
Brady Bunch. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I enjoy that character more than I have any right to.
Hmm.
There's that fun issue of Rom where Rom fights the Thinker and his awesome android.
Yes.
um, but
All
then we
right.
cut over to Dr. Otto Octavius,
Yes, he is a research scientist studying radiation. Imagine that.
right?
And to help with his research, he has developed these robotic arms,
Yeah.
where he has this little panel that he wears around his body, and it's got controls for him to. And as I'm sitting here talking about it, I'm actually trying to mimic it here
Right.
on my on myself. So,
It this
uh,
this original design for that, it looks like the dials for four rotary phones
hmm
on his chest and abdomen.
yeah.
Uh,
And so the idea was that he can control these robotic arms, and they can do the work for him while he remains safely behind the radiation shielding. Um, but at some point, there's a buildup of radiation that leads to an explosion, and Dr. Octavius is caught right in the middle of it.
I gotta say, there's a guy working in the lab who says, "Look, the radiation meter has gone wacky. Something is wrong. There's going to be a blow up." Correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't
Okay.
sound like the name of a real instrument. The radiation meter?
You know, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that's made up.
Yeah. I can't
It,
believe
it
that. In a
doesn't
comic
sound
book, no
legit.
less? Have you no shame, Stan?
Yeah.
Ah. But yeah.
So they they recover Dr. Octavius's body, and they find that the control panel and the arms have attached themselves to his body.
They're fused, yes.
They're fused together. They can't remove them. But as a result, he now finds out that he can mentally control the arms without actually having to use the control panels on the chest piece. So he can mentally direct them as to whatever he wants to do.
Yes.
And so,
That
go
sounds
ahead.
great, but unfortunately, he's now criminally insane.
Yeah, yeah. And he's going to take it out on everyone, and he realizes now that he can live up to the nickname that all of his fellow coworkers have given him of being Doctor Octopus.
Yeah.
That given his Otto Octavius and working with these mechanical arms, they had started calling him Doctor Octopus. So he's going to become Doctor Octopus. He's going to create and become a full-on villains, stealing whatever he needs, and of course that brings on Spider-Man,
Who gets it
got
handed to him.
yeah.
Um,
Uh, his first outing did not go very well.
mm-mm.
It's basically Spider-Man hasn't figured out how to deal with the multiple threats at one time, and with Octavius having those four metallic arms, he can only handle two at a time apparently, because at one point he's holding one in each hand, but the other two are still attacking him, and
Right.
it's more than Peter can handle.
And
And so,
Doc Ock
uh,
slaps him around, tosses him out the window because he says, "You're no threat to me." Bah. Spidey cries and then goes home.
Yeah, he is really emotionally beat up after this. It's like, I've gone up against Vulture and I've gone up against the
Chameleon.
Tinkerer and Mysterio. It's like, why is Doctor Octavius so hard? Have I really met my match here? And he calls up J. Jonah Jameson's like, I can't do any more photos for you. I can't help you out. He's going to give up being Spider-Man.
Man.
And sure enough, this is where the issue ends
Yeah.
because Marvel. That's how Marvel rolls.
Yeah.
And it's anytime Peter has these moments of doubt, he's always questioning. Maybe I need to give up being Spider-Man, and we see it famously with issue 50 of Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man No More, where
Yeah.
he walks away with the suit in the trash can. And it's just one of those reoccurring tropes within the Spider-Man stories
Oh
that
yeah.
when he gets really down, he thinks about quitting and just walking away from it all.
I mean, and that's not even unique to Spidey. I mean, how many times has the Thing or Johnny left the Fantastic Four?
Hmm.
Or it'd be over a decade later, but it's just like Namor storming off, leaving the Defenders again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, looking ahead to next month,
Yeah.
Peter Parker makes the most fateful decision of his life. We get the origins of the Beast and Marvel Girl, and their first adventure as the team of X-Men as they go up against Magneto. We're going to get the origin and first adventure of the Mighty Avengers, the origin of Doctor Strange, the origins of the Sandman and Lizard, the Submariner finds his lost people, Doctor Doom versus the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, plus Thor, Loki, Baron Mordo, and much, much more. How that can all be in one issue boggles the mind.
I have a feeling a couple of those plot lines are gonna be like one panel, but boy, we've got a load of fun to look forward
Yeah,
to.
and to your point there, on the inside front cover, they actually do a little continuity corner where they recap stuff that happened that there wasn't room to put into this issue.
Right.
Some of the Ant-Man's battles, some of the things that Spider-Man was going through, Thor. There's even a mention of Iron Man. We never saw Iron Man in this issue.
True.
It's getting to a point where, at this point, more and more of the books that Marvel was putting out were part of this shared Marvel universe.
Right. And also, we kind of need to get the show on the road here because it's 10 issues, or it's 9 issues, and we haven't seen the Avengers yet. I think next issue we'll see the X-Men finally come together as a team.
Yeah.
And the Avengers as well.
Yeah.
But those are things we think like this is like super early. Like, boy, we have spent 2/5 of the run of this series,
Mm-hmm.
and we haven't got the X-Men or the Avengers as a team yet.
Yeah.
Um,
And add in Doctor Strange and Daredevil.
yeah.
I mean, there's still a lot of key parts of the 1960s Marvel Universe that we still haven't even seen yet. So, Return of Captain America.
Oh, yeah. That's super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we get that like issue 11.
Yeah.
But yeah. Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Plenty of great things for our listeners to look forward to hearing us talk about.
Absolutely.
Jerry, where can everyone find you and all that on the internet?
As always, I'm 1/3 of the love child known as the worst comic podcast ever. We put up a podcast each and every Friday talking about comics, movies, TV, and other nerdy stuff that interests us. I also do a blog, Essential Showcase, where I review the Marvel Essentials and the DC Showcase Presents volumes in all their black and white glory. And coming up in early November, the Worst Comic Podcast Ever is going to be set up at Kansas City Comic Con, and we're going to be hosting a lot of panels there. And if you're in the area, we'd love for you to come by and see us.
Right on.
All right. And Comic Reflections. You're not actively podcasting, but you're still out there on the interwebs.
Oh yes, Comic Reflections is on hiatus. I do work for the United States Postal Service now.
Oh.
And we are about to hit peak season. So I was planning some episodes with some guests, but it looks like I'm probably not going to get those done before that both occurs and then subsides.
Sure.
But you can look forward to hopefully some new content from that show in 2018, in the new year. And in the meantime, Jerry and I will continue to do the Marvel Saga as we're able.
Yep.
And but yes, and Comic Reflections, it's everywhere. You can find it. Just Google that stuff; it'll come right up. Well, folks, until next time, Excelsior!
Stand a little straighter, walk a little prouder, be an innovator, laugh a little louder, go forever greater. We can show you how to. And when will you be then? You belong, you belong, you belong, you belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along, march along, march along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. If you growl, if you groan, with the dour, sour outlook, if you howl, if you moan, you can lose your sour throat for keeping trim and in step with the vim and outstep of the Merry Marvel Marching Society.
Be an early riser,
Strive to be ambitious,
speak a little wiser,
try to be judicious,
be a good advisor,
never ever vicious.
and when
Will you be then?
Face front! Lift your head! You're on the winning team!
You belong, you belong, you belong, you belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along, march along, march along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. If you growl, if you groan, and your score is merely zero, do not howl, do not moan. You can be a superhero marching right along through the fighting song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. Stand a little straighter, walk a little prouder, be an innovator, laugh a little louder, grow forever greater. We can show you how.